Welcome back, YouTube. Go ahead, come on in, take a deep breath, and yeah, just settle right into the couch. Make yourselves entirely comfortable. I am so glad you're both here today. So, as we continue our journey through this material together, we're going to use this explainer to look directly at the text for our day 4 session. And it focuses on something absolutely crucial: the fluency of affection. You know, in the relentless grind of daily life, between work obligations, paying the bills, managing the whole household, affection kind of becomes an afterthought, or, well, worse, a total miscommunication. We might genuinely feel love inside, right? But we don't always translate it accurately on the outside. And today is all about bridging that gap. It's about moving from simply feeling love to actively, successfully communicating it so your partner actually experiences it. So, are you speaking the same language? I literally see this so often right here on this exact couch. Two people who deeply care for one another, pouring their absolute maximum energy into the relationship, and yet ending up totally exhausted and feeling completely unappreciated. It's that classic dynamic of trying so hard to communicate, but ultimately just talking right past one another. Think of it like a radio signal. You might be broadcasting your affection on an AM frequency, giving it 100% of your effort by, I don't know, making dinner and cleaning the house. Meanwhile, your partner is exclusively tuned to FM. They're just waiting for you to sit down and have a meaningful conversation with them. You're exhausted because you're trying so hard, and they are resentful because they feel entirely ignored. You're both incredibly well-intentioned, but the signal just isn't connecting. And this session is designed to diagnose exactly where that static is coming from. The psychological framework for today's session is what the text calls an audit. Now, I know the word audit sounds a bit clinical, maybe like something you dread doing during tax season. But stick with me here. In our J4 text, the love language audit is presented as a highly structured, deliberate process. Because look, we aren't just guessing anymore. We don't guess with our finances, and we absolutely shouldn't be guessing in our marriages. We are taking a formal inventory. We're going to intentionally identify, share, and then actively commit to learning how the other person receives affection. When you don't map out this emotional terrain, every disagreement kind of feels like wandering in the dark without a flashlight. You bump into walls, you hurt each other accidentally. This audit, it's about turning the lights on. But to do that, we have to start with the individual. This first phase requires each of you to look entirely inward. Before you can ask your partner to meet your needs, you have to actually know what those needs are. And honestly, that is incredibly hard to do. In a marriage, it is so easy to fall into the trap of becoming hyper-focused on what our partner's doing wrong, building up this mental laundry list of their failures. It is significantly harder to stop and clearly articulate what right actually looks like for us. We just expect our partners to be mind readers, and when they fail, we punish them. So for the next few moments, I really don't want you thinking about what the person sitting next to you on the couch needs to change. I want you to look inward and ask your own baseline: how do I genuinely feel most valued? Here is the specific vocabulary of love provided in our text. We've got words, acts, touch, time, and gifts. Let's actually make these practical. Words of affirmation might mean, say, receiving an unexpected text during the day that simply says, "I appreciate you." Acts of service, that could be your partner taking out the trash or folding the laundry without ever being asked. Physical touch might just be a gentle hand on the small of your back as you pass each other in the kitchen. Quality time means putting the phones completely away, like in another room, and being fully present during dinner. And gifts? Well, it isn't about expensive jewelry or anything. It's bringing home their favorite coffee just because you thought of them. I want to give you both a few seconds of absolute silence right now. Read through these in your mind and mentally identify your primary language. Which one makes you feel the most secure and cherished? Take a second. Okay, got it? Hold on to that. Because identifying your language, that's really only the baseline. As you both know from our previous sessions, insight without action is basically just trivia. It's wonderful that you just identified your primary language in your head, but that realization doesn't magically change the dynamic in your home until we put it into practice. And this brings us to the actionable homework drawn straight from our Day 4 explainer text. We are moving from self-reflection into the weekly commitment. Because the actual therapeutic work, it doesn't happen here in my office. Nope, it happens out there in the real world. It happens in those mundane moments of the week, in the car ride to the grocery store, while you're loading the dishwasher together, or just sitting in the living room after a really long, stressful Tuesday. So, here is exactly what the text requires from each of you over the next 7 days. First, you identify your primary language, which, hey, you've already started doing today. Then comes the deeply vulnerable part, actually sharing it with your partner. You're going to verbally and explicitly tell each other what you discovered. This requires clear, direct communication. No dropping subtle hints, no passive-aggressive sighs hoping they notice your frustration, and absolutely no guessing games. None. You state your needs out loud. And finally, you commit to speaking their language this week. For the next 7 days, your assignment is to intentionally prioritize their specific dialect over yours, even and actually especially when it requires conscious effort. Now, I want to slow down our pace here for a moment. I really want you to take a breath and center yourselves because we are getting to the emotional core of this explainer, and frankly, the emotional core of why marriage can be so incredibly challenging. The text from day 4 forces us to confront a very difficult truth about human nature, and it all comes down to this: comfort versus commitment. As human beings, we naturally default to the path of least resistance, right? We want to love in the way that feels easiest and most intuitive to us. But this instinct to stay comfortable, that is exactly where the friction lives. This is exactly why you two have been feeling so profoundly disconnected lately. Think about it. Loving in your own language is your default setting. It's comfortable. If you are a words person, it feels deeply natural and totally effortless for you to just offer a verbal praise. But if your partner is an acts person, all those beautiful words, well, super comfortable for you to say, they're just bouncing right off of them. It literally doesn't register as affection to them. But loving in their language, now that is commitment. That requires you to translate your affection into a totally foreign language. It might feel awkward and honestly, it will probably feel very unnatural at first, but doing that translation is the active, deliberate work of bridging the gap between the two of you. Loving in your own language is comfortable. Loving in theirs is commitment. Wow, that is the defining revelation of our Day 4 text. Mature affection doesn't ask the other person to constantly learn your language just so you can stay in your little comfort zone. That isn't a partnership. That is a demand for convenience. True intimacy asks you to do the heavy lifting of learning their language. It requires setting aside your ego, setting aside your natural preferences to actively communicate value in a way that your partner can genuinely receive. That heavy lifting, that specific intentional discomfort, that is the very definition of showing up for your marriage. As our time wraps up today, I want to leave you with one final question, and I really don't want you to answer me right now. I want you to look at each other, take this question with you as you walk out the door, and just really ponder it together on the drive home. Will you leave your comfort zone and commit to speaking their language this week? The health of your relationship over the long term depends entirely on how you both choose to answer that question over the next 7 days. Take care of yourselves, do the work, and I will see you both right back here next week.